All right, ladies and gentlemen, one of the most prolific athletes in the sport, Brent Fikowski. We're sitting here at the 2019 Reebok CrossFit Games at day 2 and
Day 3 now.
Day 3, sorry,
Yep.
and we didn't even get to see you compete.
That's right.
And it seems maybe quaint to ask this question, but what are your feelings on that? We can dig into all the details, but overall emotions.
Haven't been any tears yet. It just sort of happened, right? Not obviously disappointed that the year of training, the work that I put in is now the couple workouts I got to do. That was my stamp on the end of my year, which is a little frustrating. Felt like there was more I wanted to show, things I've been working on I didn't get to showcase, but yeah, just trying to do my best to support and enjoy the rest of the competition and watch the other athletes do their thing. But just kind of disappointed and just kind of this feeling of like it just flew by, and all of a sudden I'm left here like, oh, this wasn't really feels very different than finishing the last 3 CrossFit Games.
I can only imagine.
Yeah.
And I know you take a while to process, so maybe that'll change over time as well. Let's dig into a couple of the details, and first the elements that you could have controlled.
Right.
When you look back at the events that you did perform in, is there anything that you would have changed?
Yeah, obviously. I think, when I talk about this, it's important that I keep in mind that most of the guys ahead of me made mistakes too, right? So, you finish, like for example, last year I came 4th, tied for 3rd with Hoberg, and I could look back and say, man, I could have done this, could have done that, and then I would have beat Hoberg and I'd have a bronze medal. But he made mistakes too, without a doubt. And then it's like, hey, if I get those 5 points and he sneaks those 5 points somewhere else, and then we just play the game forever. But yeah, there were a few mistakes I made. I think the one that's like pretty obvious was the handstand walk. I was right near the finish and had a good mindset, was just doing handstand walking and just kind of crumbled. And before I knew it, I was on my back and went back and finished it. And so had I rested an extra 5 seconds maybe before starting that handstand walk, maybe we wouldn't be sitting here right now. And probably the only other real mistake I made was on the ruck run. I started a little slow and then kind of did the come from behind and passed a bunch of guys in the last lap and a half. Maybe in hindsight, I should have started with the lead pack, tried to see if I could sort of hold on, and maybe I would have finished a little higher in that. But you don't know that for sure. Whereas the handstand walk, the 5-second difference probably would have helped a lot.
Sure.
That's really about it. I mean, the other 3 events that I competed in, I felt were a pretty accurate representation of what I was capable of in that specific moment. So.
Okay, and so then we'll dig into the uncontrollable events for this weekend, but first I want to back out for the entire year. The things that were out of your control, especially the way that the season was arranged and organized. And so, for example, I saw you in Shanghai because we had the introductions of the sanctionals. What really jumped out as something that affected you, changed the way you approach the sport, wherever you want to go with it, but about the new format changes?
Yeah, I think all the athletes were trying to make sense of it and just trying to create a plan. For me, the uncertainty wasn't too frustrating. It was more just sitting down with my coach. I'm like, let's just make a plan. Let's do what we can here, make a plan, and then just go with it. So plan was to do the open, but not have it as the priority, which is what we did. Second was, let's go to a sanctioned event right after the open. And we decided on the Asia CrossFit Championship, and that went well. I was able to win that. And then we wanted to do another sanctioned event that was a little closer to home, which was the Granite Games. Go there, sort of like have a little more fun with it, try some new things, go a little too hot, go a little too slow, just stuff like that. Test different strategies. Tried a little bit, some really, really small nutritional things. I've been sort of doing the same thing for the last few years now with my nutrition coach. So just things like that to learn some things that hopefully I could implement here, which, didn't really get to. I mean, a little bit, but not really. And then just, prepare for the CrossFit Games like I have every year, essentially. I have a different coach this year, but...
Okay, let me stop you there.
Yeah,
what were the takeaways? So, you did those experiments, and, and unless there's trade secrets...
Yeah, it's mostly trade secrets. Yeah, it's mostly trade secrets. Just really small things, learning when, and I think something that, because I'm pretty methodical,
Less
reckless, and so we were sort of seeing, like, what me being a little more potentially reckless, going into a workout without a plan at all, going into a workout with a really aggressive plan, and sort of seeing what that turned into was, and
how uncomfortable was that?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, going in without a plan didn't really work.
Yes, it's the professor.
Yeah, right.
I'm used to you breaking these things down.
Yeah, right. And so And then sometimes at the same time, I think sometimes my plans have been too conservative, and it showed up on the run. That particular plan that I thought that might have been a little too conservative, but I guess the handstand walk was a little too reckless. It didn't feel like it at the moment. It felt like a good time to jump up onto my hands, but apparently it wasn't. Yeah, so that was kind of what we learned, was just sort of playing with that. It was just really, really small things around that. And
did you bring some of that stuff though? Like, did any of it work, or was it kind of like, hey, it was good that we did the experiment, and man, I'm gonna leave it?
Yeah, like I mean, there weren't really any. When you do something like that, you either come away with sort of the answer you were maybe expecting, or a new answer. So there were no like bad experiments.
Got it.
That makes sense. Yeah. It's like, what's the...
There's no aha moments. You didn't discover gravity.
Nothing crazy, right? It's like Thomas Edison didn't fail to make a light bulb. He just found 380 ways to not make a light bulb. It's like his old expression or something. Yeah. So it's kind of like that.
Okay, that makes sense. So let's come to this weekend then.
Yeah.
The implementation of cuts is clearly why we're sitting here.
Yeah.
I want to over there. Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can be briefing right now. So I want to talk about the tests in conjunction with the cuts.
Right.
Is there a way that it could have worked better? This is multiple questions, obviously, so we can start with the test. Was the test to get us to where we are now legitimate in your eyes?
As an athlete, it's something I try to shy away from really answering that question a lot of the time, because for as long as I'm still in the sport competing, you can't get with it. You just got to deal with it, right? You can't get too caught up in, that wasn't quite right.
Yes.
Because I'm going to have my biases. I'm like, hey, why wasn't there, a bunch of sandbags in there? It's like, well, you like sandbags, man, shut the hell up. So, yeah, I try to kind of stay out of that as much as I can. I will say that, as a CrossFit athlete, you're essentially preparing for last year's event. And so that's something, you look at 2018 games and then how you did in those events. You look at your worst scores. Why did you get those worst scores? You kind of work on those things for a year. Obviously, there's more to it than that, but that's really a lot of the meat of what your training revolves around. And then you kind of look at maybe the 2017, 2016, 2015, 2014 games, look at the tests, think, how would I have shaped up in those with the body I have now? Maybe you test a few of them. And you go, okay, like that, you pick these areas to work on. So that's what I did, and that worked the last 3 years, and this year it didn't work.
Yeah. In the first event, for example, we threw a bunch of people into the mix, and I'd love to hear your opinion of that as a multi-year veteran and a podium finisher.
The first event?
Yeah, like the fact that we brought national champions this year in particular.
Yeah, there's a bunch of different, I think depending on the day you ask me, I feel differently about it, right?
I get that. I'm the same way.
Yeah, they were really great.
Yeah.
Like, I got to meet a few of them really briefly, and maybe more briefly than in some ways I would have liked, but I'm here to do my job. They were so humble and so gracious and just so excited to be here. And just, grateful for the opportunity. It was hard to see their weekend get cut short after one event was part of it. And obviously as a competitor, there's part of me where I'm like, see you later, deuces. Like, I got to do my thing.
Right.
But then I'm gone. And it was 2 minutes later.
Yeah.
And so they were excited. And part of it is I hope that they had a good experience. Like that the trip was worth it for them.
Yeah.
And the experience and getting to be with us, me and the other athletes, and getting to Jersey and getting to go out there and compete for one event. I hope that was a good experience for them. I don't really know.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think you're absolutely right. I was going down the route of like, but it was a well-programmed event for number one. But what if it just happened to be one person's jam, and that does affect your point scoring system? But that's another what.
That's part of it too, right? If you change that, and that was really as good of a workout as you could have for a first cut workout. There's not really much more you could do. But you still had a couple guys, like Tim Paulson and Street Horner and RP Castillo, 3 guys from America who did well in the Open and are top dudes. They've had good regional. I think
I saw Street all around the world doing fantastic.
Yeah, Street was crushing it all year. Yeah. Tim's been crushing regionals for a couple years. He had a pretty solid games last year. RP missed last year, but he made the games the year before that. And they're good. They're really good. Like that if things worked out just right, they could be top 20, top 10 dudes. Who knows? So yeah, it was hard. It was hard to see that. Right out the bat, they were pretty heartbroken that their games was done straight away. And
sure.
Yes, it's just like it's a new it's a new era potentially of just like
I feel that way.
And so I think a lot of us, the athletes that have been cut, started to have some conversations with them. We're all feeling a little shell shocked, right? Because most us being the people I speak with, the veterans, we're trying to figure it out. We're like, well, what does this mean for us next year? Because we're thinking next year.
Sure.
Obviously, the guys in the stadium, they're just worried about the next 2 days. But we're thinking next year, like, hey, what do I need to work on? Yeah, how can I make this not happen again?
Sure. That's great. So there are no feelings of like, screw this amount. It's more, how do I adapt to a new?
Oh, there's probably some of that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the initial reaction after anything like this. Just in the same way when I didn't make regional, or I wasn't able to make the games after 2-3 years of trying. It's like, man, am I out? Like, am I just gonna screw this whole thing? And so for me, it's like, is the sport moving past the Brent Fikowski type athlete? Like, I was able to come fourth in the world, second in the world, fourth in the world. Now I'm 23rd. Is that indicative of what I'm doing? Is that because I'm not fit to this new type of test? Is that was it the fluke? Is it going to be just a bump and then I'm back up? Right? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And so, I've got to figure out the pros and cons of sticking with it in a crazy sport and not sticking with it. And I'll stick with it, that's the plan for sure. But it's, like what next season looks like and how I prepare for the games and what my training looks like, how many sanctionals I go to, what online qualifiers to do, the Open. Yeah, there's a lot of change, and I think a lot of the sanctionals are looking for direction on what their comp programming is going to look like, how they're going to invite athletes, are they going to do online qualifiers, how that whole ecosystem works with now, I think it's 32 sanctionals.
Yes.
It's getting pretty crazy out there. It's a jungle, so I don't know. Yeah, it's a wild world.
Time will tell with that stuff.
Time will tell, man.
Well, you're far too talented with far too much to offer to. I'm sure you won't hang up your hat. So it'll be interesting. I would love to see how your next year looks. Let's suck it down to the immediacy of right now, with more competition to come, and viewers can't see, but if we're looking, we can see the Coliseum right there. You're hanging out over here at the hotel, and thank you for taking the time. But tell me about the emotions. And mine are less relevant, but it's hard for me to walk around over there sort of with this new kind of reality.
Yeah.
So after being cut, people still want to know Brent Fikowski, still want selfies, they still want to, have you sign stuff, and you're still a hero to them. But what are the emotions like, kind of being here at the venue but not being a competitor?
It hasn't been as hard as I maybe thought it would be, if that makes sense. I think if it had shaken out in a different way, like maybe if I had, let's say it was a traditional 40-man CrossFit Games and I finished the weekend in 23rd, there might be a little bit of like, oh boy, like, what did we do? Like, what have we not done, or whatever. But because it happened really quite abruptly, and I mean, I gave my best. Like, there wasn't any, other than the handstand walk slip up, there wasn't any huge slip ups. And honestly, even with that, I look at a guy like Vellner, who had an incredible year in the sanctionals, right? Crushed Wadapalooza, did great at the Rogue Invitational, had a pretty solid Open. We're similar athletes, we usually place well in similar events, and he didn't make the cut after the sprint. And so even if I had the perfect ruck run, the perfect handstand walk, and then went out there and did my best on the sprint, I don't know. Like, I would have been trying to squeak into that top 10. It wouldn't have been a surefire thing, just based on these events, right? That's just me being honest. I just wasn't up to the challenge of these events. And so as far as emotions, I'm not doing too bad. I plan to go over there and do some some signings and stuff, because it's cool that people want to see me, and I know how much that means to some people. I remember looking up to athletes when I was younger and stuff, and so getting that opportunity, me already being here, not having to travel across the country just to do a signing. It's nice just to be here and get it done, and that's what people are here, right? They're here to watch us compete, but a little bit of interaction is kind of cool too.
Cool.
I am human, I poop and all that stuff. So.
What? Breaking news!
I eat a lot of food.
So answer this next one then.
Yeah.
So you're saying you didn't, you, again, very graciously accepting that you didn't have what it took to make the cut.
Yeah.
Had you either answer this as, had I made the cut, I would have liked these, or talk about somebody who's still in that you would like, and I'm going to read you the next two events that just got announced.
Yeah, so I don't know these next two events.
So event 7, split triplet. 5 rounds per time of 1 pegboard ascent, 100 double unders, 10 single arm dumbbell hang split snatches. 10 single arm dumbbell hang clean and split jerks.
Damn, I would have loved that.
You would have loved that. 80
that's
pounds.
a little frustrating.
Must alternate arms in between each one. Doesn't really matter. Both pegs.
It's a cool workout too.
It is kind of cool with the whole split. So knowing who you know in the event still, or Well, let's start with that. You would have loved this.
Yeah, that would have been fun.
And the professor, how would have you broken it down?
It's pretty fast. Like
Yeah.
it's pretty much unbroken. Probably hook grip the dumbbell. You do the pegboard. Obviously, you just get down it as quick as you freaking can. 100 double unders unbroken. The interesting thing is some guys will actually make up a little bit of time on the 100 double unders. Like if you just do them, it takes a minute. But if you can find a way to like really whip the rope around without jacking up your heart rate, you might get 50 seconds, which is, that's 10 seconds over 5 rounds adds up. So that's kind of like an X factor that a lot of people won't see. And then
alternating hang split snatches.
so obviously
it's athletic.
80, yeah, it is, right? It's 80 pounds. If you can find a way to potentially, I don't think that's really touch and goable. Do you have to alternate on
I think like if you're not a good dancer, you can't do alternating hang split
I
snatches.
practiced those.
Hands. Do you really?
Yeah, like not a lot, but it was in Dave Castro's book, so.
Smart man.
Fun fact. Must alternate arms on each rep of the hang snatch. Oh, so you don't have to on
each of the
No,
snatches.
yeah. So the split snatches will mess, and like 80 pounds isn't light. So we had this. I think it was 75 pounds at regionals, right? That was like all the workouts were regionals 2-3 years ago with that, and so those dumbbell snatches were like a little hard in the ring dip workout for sure. Not like super hard, but. So the guys will move through those pretty quick, but it's just going to be, especially in those last like 3 rounds, you're going to mess up your footing. You're going to get 2 no reps in a row because you switched when you shouldn't have.
Yep.
That'll start adding up. And then just, obviously a little bit of lockout fatigue. Like if you don't have that really good overhead position, I'm not sure. In the open this year, not a lot of overhead stability was tested, which is where most of these guys made it through. And then again, so far in the weekend, I guess we've had a bit. We've had the handstand walk, we had the squat snatches. But it's hard to say. So if you don't have
pegboard, we had 300 and some odd pull-ups for some of these guys.
Right. Yeah. So that'll tighten them up a bit.
Yeah.
So the overhead stability will play a factor there near the end. In the first rounds, everyone's gonna start at about the same pace, and then it's sort of gonna be near the end. It's like who can just go right to that pegboard, climb up and down,
Got
and
a
then
pick?
I mean, it's a pretty cheap pick, but it's Matt Fraser.
Okay.
Okay. It's like, whoa, Brent, you're such an analyst. Let me. I'm trying to think of anyone else. I'd have to like look at the names and like cross analyze. But I mean, Fraser crushed the pegboard last year.
This will run after the event's gone.
Okay.
So like, so the last event, 1 rep clean. Tied with a tiebreaker. So if you fail any of them, you go to a tiebreak bar and you race through 5 reps at 295.
Oh, it starts pretty damn heavy.
315.
What's the
It doesn't look
each
like it
round?
says.
So it's just like it looks like an EMOM or something, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so every minute you do
Maybe
a heavy
like
lift.
a ladder.
That starts pretty heavy. It's going to be interesting. I'd have to look at the field again, but
Noah's in the mix. What do you think about Noah Olsen like doing well this year?
yeah, I mean, Noah's a guy that is obviously has an immense amount of ability, right, and fitness, and I feel like he's able to ride waves.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So when he has like a wave and things are going well, he's able to ride that, and so far things seem to be going pretty well.
Really well.
So that makes things interesting.
He staved off Matt in that Marion. I think that's like a turning point in his career, just to be able to look him down and be like, no, not today,
and just keep pushing forward. Yeah, that's not easy to do, right? It's not that sort of thing is hard to do. To people don't fully understand like that. It's hard to win.
Yeah.
Right. Like winning's like really hard. It's one thing to have the ability, and it's another thing to like push that little bit more and like believe that it's okay to do that and then do it is really hard to do. And like, it's easy for me to say that because I haven't done it on this stage. I've done it on regional stage and stuff. But yeah, it's not easy to do. It's one thing to have the ability because a lot of people have that. So it's cool to see Noah make that push and then hit a really good sprint. It looks as though he must have been working on that. He seemed to be running quite well. So him and his coach with the training think tank, Max, they must be working on that. So that's great. And that's got to be satisfying to see that come to fruition in a big finish like that. Something you work on that isn't your specialty. But yeah, that second workout, the clean, starts pretty heavy. So it'll be interesting to see how the guy's legs feel. Like I'd be able to start at 315. That would be fine with how my legs feel after Mary. I think most of those guys will be okay, but like 315 to 325 to 335 every minute. I think it's every minute. Yeah, that'll be interesting. I think some guys, there's like this, Matt might get up to whatever he needs to win, which could be 380, but a lot of those guys are a little on the smaller side, so I think you'll see a lot of guys bow out pretty early in that ladder.
Okay, we'll see how that plays out here shortly. So I'm going to bring it back to you, and I'll let you go here soon, but 3 more, and the first one I'd love for you to dig in more on like what it takes to win. That's a really cool thought for me. And what do you mean by that? So some people have the physical abilities, but they don't have the mentality. Is it something you can practice, or is it just something you got it or you don't? And boy, I think that a top 5. Okay.
Yeah, you can totally practice it. It takes. I think it just. I don't know. That's just a general mindset thing.
Meaning, like doubt can creep into anybody.
Doubt can creep in, right?
You can be the best athlete in the world, and you just can't perform on game day.
Yeah. Doubt can just creep in, and then I think there's this element of, an element of luck with sport that, I'll watch like some ESPN analyst or something talk about some basketball game, right? I was following the playoffs a lot, and those guys can be pretty ruthless. It's like, hey man, the guy went out there, tried to shoot the ball the best he could, and he shot 30% from the field, and yesterday he shot 40, and now he's a slum. It's like, it's like sometimes the ball don't go in. And so that can be hard, and if you let those kind of voices seep in, like, am I a has-been? Are my best days behind me?
Right.
That could be tough. As far as mental stuff, I mean, you just got to find what works for you. I don't think the same sort of mental approach works for everyone. And the interesting thing too is that, just because you've won doesn't mean you have a champion's mindset. Yeah. So I think there's the different winners win different ways, right?
You had said at 17.1, it wasn't even during the broadcast. It was after we got egged and powdered afterwards.
Oh yeah.
We were hitting the showers. And you had a really interesting thought that I've never forgotten about, like, I was talking about mindset and keeping a good one. And you're like, yeah, well, the thing is you can't just decide you want it on game day.
Yeah.
It is something that you have to, like, engender every single day. And you seem like you're particularly good at that.
Man, I try. So, yeah, it's like I use the expression, like, how you deal with traffic when you're in your car is going to be how you deal with adversity in sporting competition.
Yes.
Right? Or, like, how you deal with bad news, in work is going to be how you deal with a bad judging call. Like, it's total. That's the best mental coach. And I whenever I'm on these shows, whenever I'm typing or whatever, it's like, oh, Brent's this sage. It's like, man, I'm working on it. I have bad days. Like, honestly, this year has been probably more. It's been ups and downs, but probably more downs mentally. And on that side of my game, there's been more downs this year. Just self-doubt and stuff has been creeping in, and just all sorts of little things that I won't go into in too much detail, but it's been a hard year.
Yeah,
right?
Even just to hear that, though, I think it's helpful for people.
Yeah, it's like, it's real. I'm not perfect by any stretch. I'm working on it harder this year because I needed to. You can't let your foot off the gas. As soon as you think you're like, oh, I'm mentally tough, it's like then you're not, and it's done.
Yes.
So, and I think if you let yourself slip on that even a little bit as an athlete or anyone, it creeps back in, man.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been an up and down year, and luckily it all kind of It did. It all fell into place before the workout, before the competition. I was feeling really good, and I was feeling confident, feeling smooth, and feeling like I did the start of the last 3 CrossFit Games, and then this one just went the way it went. And it's unfortunate. It's the lowest finish I've ever had at a CrossFit competition for 7 years. I think the lowest I've ever finished at a comp has been 8th. In-person comp, obviously the open's been lower, but any in-person comp, regionals, outside of regional competitions, sanctionals, the games, it's been 8th or better, so it's a little bit of a dip, but and there's a lot more dudes here too, right?
Yes.
So it's the deep, and because there's more, it's the deepest. I mean, you see, let's say the male athletes in the top 50. Within that male athlete category, there's probably 30 men that have at some point sat in the top 10 at the CrossFit Games. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like it's some year or another. So it's like this all-star group, and it's just who happens to. So maybe that's just the new way. It's like getting to the CrossFit Games used to be like the stamp of approval, and now maybe it's a lot of people make the CrossFit Games, and now it's who can survive the pegboard workout, I guess.
So let's just kind of pivot on that and say, so it was an up and down year. It was a all in all disappointing but informative year for you at the CrossFit Games. What do you foresee for yourself next 365 days? You're putting out a lot of media. You're doing your training stuff.
Yeah.
All that kind of stuff is really fun to watch.
Yeah, you have to follow me on Instagram because I don't really know what I'm going to do yet.
Okay.
So we were leaving, that decision, me and like my wife and my coach and that sort of thing, like, well, how are we going to schedule this new year? Because it used to be kind of easy. You just knew like, okay, we had a couple months here to deload, train, have a bit of fun, and then it was open regionals games. So that your life as an athlete would sort of revolve around that. And now there's all these options with sanctioned events, and so how do we structure that in and have a semblance of a life outside of that? And how do we structure my training so I can really try and build in some areas and not just like compete every weekend until I explode?
Yes.
So I don't really know. I think tentatively,
that's a great answer. I mean,
I'll do the open. I will do the Open in some capacity, probably not as my like focus because I probably can't qualify through that means. So I'll do the Open, and then I'll do 1 to 4 sanctionals. Don't really know what that would look like. I'm hoping 3.
Okay.
And then come back to the CrossFit Games. So,
Cool.
Yeah.
Future's unknown, but it's always fun watching you.
Thanks.
And really appreciate you taking the time, brother.
Thank you.
To sit down.
Yeah.
Yep.